Well, I think a lot of architects are interested in pipe organs. A rather famous person who was a organ builder, but also an architect, made a 2-volume set of how to build one, and his name was Audsley, George Audsley, and he was an expatriate, an American expatriate, but he lived in England, and that was a textbook for builders till about 1930, and then some German people wrote several books that were better. But my interest started when Trinity University Chapel was built. A man named Otto Hoffmann put the organ in, and I helped him install. Of course, I didn't know enough to really help, but that gave me a background and a sort of interest. You know, you learn as you go along when you start building. But of course, this pipe organ is not a kit. It's a real pipe organ that was developed from drawings. And of course, that's where an architect has a very good bite on building, is that you start with drawings and then you think and then you try to revise and to do all these chests and do all these fittings, and then to get all of those pipes to fit is quite a chore. So that's how architects get interested in pipe organs and pipe organ building, although most don't build pipe organs, I'm sure. Unique in that way, I guess. A pipe organ is an installation in a building, and so the building becomes, because it's acoustically tied to it, it's part of the instrument. So an organ that's built for one space may not sound too well in another space. And of course, what you go by is reverberation times. Here in this smallish house, although this is a little bit larger than average, the space, the cubic footage, is only 46,000 feet. So the reverberation time, that is the echo effect, is no longer, it's probably no longer than a quarter of a second. Whereas in a large cathedral, the RT, or reverberation time, will run maybe 5 seconds. So, you know, that gives them an ethereal quality in low registers of music, or in bombastic music, it comes back at you in a great fanfare. So the building is the instrument in that case. And so that's part of the interest that architects have in organ building or organs. My natural interest then in tying an organ to a building is that they're congruous, they go together. It's part of what the acoustic allows, it's part of what the dynamic of the thing is. So people who are interested in architecture should be interested in organs and vice versa. Well, some of that is in the chest work. You know, it's a piece of furniture. And so joints have to be made, and corners rounded, and corners dealt with, and bottoms put in, and chamfers for this and chamfers for that. That's part of the architecture of the casework. And then after that, then you have to do drawings for all of the internal parts of the organ, like the toe boards and the pieces that actually support the pipes. And so when you've done all that, you've done quite a bit of drawing. In this case, about 60 sheets of drawing. And yeah, that's the complication of it, I'd say. And many people probably are not fitted out to want to do that much fine detail work, you know. If you're more a generalist, you can't be bogged down with that fine work, I guess you'd say. I love to detail in buildings. I love to do the detailing almost better than anything. After the general design is there, I really do love to do the detailing and to make everything fit properly and to make it builderly. In other words, there's several ways to do things, but there's a builderly way, something that you know the tools are able to do. What tools are available? Like the CNC machine is something of modern invention that cuts all these things out. When you give them a drawing, it has to be digitized. you take a drawing and digitize the drawing, and then you take it to a mill, and you're done, really. Your part is done. That machine starts spitting out parts, and then your next test is how to put it all together and hopefully remember what you did before. And your drawings will be the assist. And there'll be snags, but you'll do it. Well, how does detail, how does it mesh with general architecture? When you have to solve problems in organ building, they mainly have to do with size, proportion, scale. Each pipe is changing scale as it goes along, each one slightly larger or slightly smaller than the previous pipe that it's sitting by. And so those accommodations have to be made on the pipe chest, and you make a pattern of how best to put them in the organ. And all of that detail consideration can be expanded in a way to buildings, because that's what you do. How many windows are in this facade? How will they relate? How will they be made to be proportional with, let's say, the upstairs windows? Or will they mesh with the door trim? And will they be detailed in a manner that it all goes together? Those are important things that I like to work with. I really do love detailing. I'm not interested in recreating the past per se, but on the other hand, I think there's such a thing as propriety. And industrial materials don't necessarily go with houses. That's just my opinion. And of course, I'm at odds with a lot of architects who use them regularly. And I don't think every beam that's just 4 feet tall extending out from the eaves of a house has to have a support running down to the wall on a diagonal, which is a current cliche. So I'd rather avoid cliches of all kinds, and I'd rather do a building that someone will not be able to say exactly when it was built. They will say, well, it might be, but look, the hardware says it might have been last year. But clues about the building will tell you maybe the exact date or the milieu, the time, but you draw from the past and you try to come forth with a product that is ameliorating with you, your own desires as an owner, and you want to bring it out. And the architect should forget about his own ego. The program is what matters. The program of the owner is what matters. And I always have a person write down those things on a cards, a little library cards, and then sort through them and prioritize them. And I think that's so important in small projects, that you get the real hang of what the owner wants. A lot of architects want to have a brand, and of course they only get the clients who've seen their brand and they want to purchase that brand. But that's more like buying a pair of running shoes, and you'd rather have this brand rather than another brand. And I don't go with that. I don't think that's an important way to approach architecture.